wonderful, you've made a level, but that's not a game. A game is many levels chained together, so how do you do that? Had some questions about lights, the difference between static and dynamic, and how that works. And quite a few requests to have a look at Lua script, which is quite an advanced topic, but you know, why not? Those are the feedback, that's what we want to see, then that's what I'm going to demonstrate. So I'll start off with lights, specifically the light mapper. So the best way to demonstrate it is to choose a building, plop it down, and then go straight into test game, and we're going to use the light mapper. And you don't need to add any lights. There's the sun in the sky is already a light source, and as you can see, we actually have some shadows here. Now those, as I said before in the yesterday's broadcast, those are real-time shadows, as you can see, lighting real time. If I actually press F3, you can see you've got different light mapping modes. You've got quick, basic, lights and occlude. F1's the quickest form of light mapping, and then F4 does something called occlusion, which can actually work out if some geometry is like in a corner, so it's not going to receive much light. The way it does that, it casts some rays out, and if it hits something, then it must be in shadow. So now when we look at our tab, you can see lighting is pre-bake, which means that isn't a real-time shadow anymore. It's actually been baked into the terrain, into the floor, which actually makes it faster. So that's light mapping. And if you wanted to, for example, if we run into the building now, really dark, right, and quite matte too, you don't get any appreciation of the light because it's been completely blocked out by the sun. So what we can do is go back into the editor, go to markers. We can choose something like a red light. And there's two kinds of lights, the dynamic lights and static lights. The big green circle means it's dynamic. If you press the Y key, it will go to red. Press Y again, goes back to green. Red for stop means static. Green for go means dynamic, which means it's flexible and it's mutable. You can do things with it. We want to show a static light, so we're going to put a static light just here, and you see the little icon disappear. That means it's gone inside the building. So we'll just click it anywhere inside the building for now, like so, and we're going to go and repeat the process. We'll do test game, and then we're going to do F3 again. So we press F3, and you'll notice that the red light wasn't there when you first went to test game, because static lights only act on the light map process. So you can have lots of these. You can have as many of these static lights as you want, and it bakes that light information into your scene, and there's no cost to it because it just becomes a texture. So if we look now, almost right away you can see what's going on. It looks a lot better. You've actually got some lighting going on. Now obviously it's pretty crude. It's actually placed the light underneath that floor. It's at sort of a 0 Y coordinate, so it's just underneath. So what you can actually do if you wanted to see it in all its glory, let's zoom down a bit, and then what we can do is press. I'm just going to show you lots and lots of really cool editor features. I use them as a second nature, but you may not even know about them. If you press tab once, it actually chops the first 100 pixels of the scene. It keeps on the y-axis, chops everything else off. The reason for that is you can edit inside buildings very quickly and easily. Now you'll also notice that I want to select the light, but it's the building that's being selected rather awkwardly. Look what else I can do. I can click that and press lock. And what lock will do, it will say, you know, keep the entity, but I don't want to keep selecting it. I want you to lock it out of the selection process. And it also locks it into the scene as well. So if I click lock, it goes into a semi-transparent to say it's now kind of out the way. But look, I can now select, I'll go out a little bit more, you can see I'm selecting the light, which is pretty cool. And what I can also do is click that, it gives me a widget, and then see this little arrow. You can go up and down, left and right, backwards and forwards. I want the up and down, so I'm just going to move it up a little bit, like that. And you can tell it's worked because you get a little sheen there. Even though it's a static light, I help you out in the editor. I actually create like a dynamic marker, so you can actually see its influence dynamically in real time. But it's never going to be a dynamic light, it's always a static one. So that's enough rambling from me. Let's go back into test game. And now we've raised that red light up a little bit, we can now press F3 again. The reason I don't press F4 is it's a slightly longer light mapping process, because the idea of casting the rays and creating that occlusion, it's very intense. Every single pixel in the scene casts all these rays out and hits other geometry, and it's a very intense process. It does produce a nicer light map, but I would advise you go make a cup of tea. Right, here we go. So as you can see, you've now got much better than just that bland, dark, boring room. You've got tense light in the centre, and then it fades off into the edges. And of course you can change the colour of the light, the intensity of it, where it is. You can have multiple lights, and it doesn't really matter. It bakes it all into the scene, and then you get it for free because it's just a texture. Now that's a static light. Now I want to show you very quickly a dynamic light. So let's say I'll pick let's pick yellow. Let's pick a yellow light. So if we zoom in a little bit more, and we'll maybe lower it a little bit, you'll notice it's green. It's I'm also using the plus and minus. Also, another thing, whilst I mention it, I added a little gadget in the bottom right, which shows you what keys I'm pressing. So very good. If I've not mentioned which keys I've pressed, and you kind of wonder how did he do that? Just look at this. It gives you a nice history of what I've pressed. It's minus and plus, but on the key that I'm using, it's an equal sign. But don't let that confuse you. It's actually a plus sign. So I'm just going to drop that down, and that's a dynamic light. As you can see, it's sticking around. Now what we can do, this is really cool, is you can click Properties and look at the script that it's using, light1.lua. Now that does nothing. It basically just says there's a light, and that's that. But just to show the power of a dynamic light, if I change the script to something like lightSwitch.lua, so I'll use that one instead, and then apply that change, it does something really cool. I'll add a start marker down here, say there, run the level, and this script was written to allow you to simulate light switches. So if we move closer, now obviously the light itself is invisible, you don't see the icon, but you see the influence of the light. But as we move closer to it, it actually in the script it says as soon as you get near enough to the light's origin, pop up a prompt for, say, press E to turn light off. I'll press E, and the script can detect that I've pressed E and do something. In this case, I wanted to switch the light off, so I can actually toggle the light. Now you can't do that with a static light. It's baked in the textures. You know, it's way too late. You shipped your game and all these lights have been baked into your scene. But dynamic lights are powerful. You can actually move them, you can change the colours, you can switch them on and off. They're all very cool. And because of the powerful, and they actually are a cost in the shader, you can only have so many of them. You can have as many as you want in the scene, but make sure you don't have 4 dynamic lights too close to each other, because there's only 4 dynamic lights rendered at any one time, and there's some clever stuff in the engine to fade in out distant lights to bring in closer lights into contention. So that's a quick look at light mapping, static lights and dynamic lights. But what I can do now is, now I've got a nice little scene, is show you the other thing people wanted to look at, which was making a game. So that's more than one level. And just to make it easier on me, I'm going to create a little path. So I'll start there, and maybe you have to walk into the building, and then when you're in the building, that will take you to level 2. Not a really great level, I grant you, but you know, it's a good start. And so if you remember from yesterday, you use a win zone, and that will actually say you've completed this level, you can go to the next one. So we'll drop that one in, and we'll just cover that area. So as soon as you walk through the door, you're going to enter this trigger zone, and then normally that would win you the game. Ka-ching, you've won the game. But there's this really clever thing that you can do. But before I show you that, I'm going to save this level for prosperity. So save as, and I'm going to call it underscore level 1. I only put the underscore in so the file will actually appear at the top of my list. So that's underscore level 1. And if I click on the win zone, go into properties. Now normally it's winzone.lua, but look, if used. Now normally it's blank, that means, you know, just win the game. But if I put underscore level 2, in there, that basically says instead of just winning the game, load this level, which is level 2. So we apply that change, we save our level 1, but of course now we need to create level 2, right? Fair enough. So we're going to start a new game, let's say a new level, sorry, so new random level. And as soon as you walk through the building, what happens? Maybe you get transported to this, and then you've got perhaps some mountains, maybe. So you can start there. It's, you know, this is not going to win any awards, but you'll get an idea of what's happening. And where would you start? You would probably start there. So that's where you'd start. And now we're going to save this as underscore level 2, which matches what we entered earlier. So the idea is that you'll start, you'll run into the house, it will say, oh, you've got to that win zone, it will transport you to level 2, and then you carry on your game. And now if you wanted to win this game, maybe the objective is you've got to run over the hill, run over here, and then again, to complete the whole game, because this is the last level, you have to enter this area. And if you wanted a third level, again, you would go into here if used underscore level 3. But this is our last level, so we won't do that. So we'll leave it as is. We'll save level 2. Now, in order to build your entire game, you load in level 1 again, because you always start with the first level when you're actually going to export your game. To remind ourselves, that's what we're going to have. And now we're going to go to File, Save Standalone. And what that will do, it will save your level. There you go. So it's saved it into My Games folder. Now we can have a look at that. I've got it somewhere. Here it is. So, where would I have it? Well, it would be in My Documents, wouldn't it? This one. So it'll be your documents, and then there's a special folder called Game Guru Files. Inside there is a folder called My Games, and then underscore level 1, and that's been created. Now before we run it, we can just check to see whether it all works fine. And the way you do that, look into Map Bank inside Files, and you'll notice you've got underscore level 2. So it has all the levels that our game's going to need. So we'll run it. So now this is running your standalone. You don't need Game Guru from this point on. You can zip this whole folder up and then send it to your friends, and then they can play your game. Royalty free, license free, don't have to worry about all that kind of stuff. So we'll press start. It loads in the first level, and then remember the idea is that we run through the door, and then that will transport us to level 2, and then we have to run along the path, and that will complete the game. So we run, as you remember, we've got a light. We can run in, and remember when we go through here, it fades out. So we've completed level 1, and now it loads level 2. And remember, we created this pit with some rock in it, and we have to follow the path. So now we're on level 2 of our game, and then we run through this wilderness of nothing, and then we get to this win zone, and now we've got to the end of level 2. And these screens that you're seeing, these sort of crazy metallic things, you can replace those with whatever you want. So this would be your congratulations, you've won the game, with a nice picture or maybe some music playing in the background. And then you press continue, and then that takes you back to the main menu again, and then you can play the game again, or you can quit the game. So that's a standalone game with 2 levels. So that's how you do that. Now, there was a request for how do you do lure, which is, it's a very advanced topic, but I'm quite happy to show off. For example, probably a good idea to show you is this. Remember the light that you could switch on and off, and we specified it, light switch.lure. Well, I can actually show you that. Here it is, light switch.lure. So if I double click that, I've used a text editor called Notepad++. It's really good. It highlights lure syntax very well. So you can see that's blue, comments are green, and then pretty much everything else is black except literals, which are orange. So it's a really great text editor. I highly recommend it if you want to start getting into scripting. And if you're not familiar with programming or not interested in programming, this would probably seem quite crazy and gobbledygook. But it's actually pretty straightforward. Think of it just a logical progression of instructions punctuated by conditions that will sort of wait until that condition is met, and then you would execute the following instructions. You know, like wait till the kettle is full of water before switching it on, that kind of thing. So I'll walk through this. As you can see, the light switch, when it's first run, will have a little array here, and as you can see, you declare it at the top, and the E is passed in. With every script that's run, it's associated with an entity, and the entity has a unique index, so that is passed in with the E value, and we can use that to create a unique index into a new array we create here, and we call it on. And then of course, when the game is running, that's when this gets called, and what happens is it loops through all these instructions over and over and over. It just keeps going round and round and round and round. Every time you're in the level, that's what happens. And so at any time you can detect things and make things happen. In this particular case, I won't really explain everything. I'll just give you the general gist, which is get player distance will get the distance between the entity, in this case it's a light, and the player that's running around. So if you were like, you know, a mile away, this would be a really large number, and if you were standing nose to nose with this entity, and light in this case, then the number would be very small. So you can see that this condition only perform the rest of these actions if you were less than 150 units from the player, so which means you're very close. And if you remember the test game, when we moved closer to the light and the prompt appeared, that's when it happened. So, and obviously that distance was 150, but you can actually change that to whatever you want. I mean, I could probably do that now, actually, just to really demonstrate it. So 150 is what it was. If we make it 450, and then we save it, so you see it's red, which means you've modified it. So if we click that, it'll save it. We go back to Game Guru. You see we're using the script, which is great. But just so we know it works, we're going to move the player further back, about, say, there, and we're going to run test game. Great thing about scripts is you can do a test game, come out of test game, modify the script, and save it, and then run test game again, and the new script will be used. You don't have to leave the software and come back. So that's very cool. Now remember, the prompt was very. We had to get really close. Look how far away I can be now. Look, see? I only have to be this far away for the press E to turn light off. So I've actually changed the script right there and then. So off, on. Which brings us to the next mechanics. So there are two states, aren't there? There's the light being on and the light being off. And we're going to do a different thing based on that state. So if the light is on, and remember by default, we created that on state before, you know, when we initialized the level. So we know it's on. So that's its first action. And then this prompt, that's a command, that will tell the game engine to draw some text to the screen, and that's the text we wanted to draw. Press E to turn light off. So if I put dude, then I've just changed the text, but we won't run it again. I'll do a bit more. This is a really cool variable. It will pass in a 1 into this variable if you've pressed E key, and it's 0 if you're not pressing the E key. There's other commands buried deeper into Lua, but you can discover those yourself by looking at a file called global.lua, and I'll actually show you what that is now. I won't go through all this, it's quite a large file, but you'll see here all these variables. You've got key pressed here, but you've also got scan code and in key. Also, these can detect keys as well, but you also know the player's position, the player's angle, the health, how many lives the player's got. So there's lots of data you can use to create your conditions with. In this particular case, we just want to know when the E key is pressed, and when it is pressed, we basically change the state that's currently stored in light switch. That's an array, and that's the magic ingredient there. Hide light. Hide light we'll hide the light that's associated with the entity. And you know which entity you're talking about, because remember the E that's passed in? Well, it's passed into this function as well. So that's how you can actually modify the light. And of course, if we look down here, we actually detect when you release the E key. So remember it, if you slowed it right down, when you press the key, you're holding down the key. But then you have to kind of release the key before you can press it again. So it can be very fine-grained, all the details that you have to put into a script in order to get the behavior you want. So when you've released the key, offing is detected as true, so then you change that to off, so the new state is off. Then the next time you press the E key, this is going to be true, so it's off. And of course, as soon as I switch it to off, I can change the name now, so press E to turn light on. So we change the prompt that's given in the game. And again, you detect the E key, that's pressed, and then you go onning, show the light, and then down here, as soon as you release, onning becomes on, and we rinse and repeat, and we go all around the process again. So if I just put some change in here, hello world, for no fathomable reason, always remember to save, otherwise nothing will happen. Go back to your game, press test, and we'll see whether prompts have changed. I could probably spend 10 broadcasts teaching you the basics of programming, but I often find it easier just to play around and try and break it and then try and repair it again. You'll learn a lot that way. So now we've got a modified text. Press E to turn light off, dude. Press E to turn light on. Hello world! Exclamation mark. So there you go. So that's pretty much wrapped up to 30 minutes on the things that people wanted to see. So I hope that provided some details on those subjects. I'm now going to have a quick look at the comment section to see if there's any additional questions. Also, if anyone thinks the question has just been lost because it's now right up at the top of the comments chain, then feel free to ask that question again so it doesn't get lost. And I was told off last time that I was only looking for question marks to figure out whether it was a question or not, but I'm not going to do that this time. I'm actually going to read the whole lot. From the amount that I can see on my screen right now, you can replace them with your own images. Okay, that's a good reply. Blah blah blah, that looks like that's already been answered. I have a Game Guru bug, can everyone help me? I'm French. We could probably help you with the bug after this broadcast. We can help you out in the forums where we can actually exchange all the details, and if there's other community members that have already solved that issue, then they can pitch in as well. And then if you exhaust that resource, then absolutely we'll be happy to help you directly by email. Yeah, it looks like that's already been repeated. And okay, looks like no one has any questions about what I've demonstrated, which is great. It means I've done a brilliant job. Want to see character head importing? Well, I've got some good news about that. In order to give myself a bit of time off and to give you the best possible material for the broadcasts, we're going to actually use Ravi, who actually created the character creator, to demonstrate the character creator in detail, and that will be broadcast next week. And during that, it'll do probably 20 to 30 minutes just showing all the features that you can do, but then you can really put him on a barbecue and grill him and ask him to show you how to customize body parts, add additional heads, change textures, you know, all the crazy cool stuff that you can do under the hood. I'm not qualified to do that. I could probably muddle my way through, but I don't think it'd be a good use of your time to see me faff about for 10 minutes trying to figure out what to do. So I think the best thing for you to do is to keep an eye out on the forums for the post on when we'll be doing the character creator broadcast, and then you'll get it actually from the horse's mouth, and every answer will be a great answer. So that'll be Ravi. He'll be taking over next week because I will be in Brighton at the Develop Conference speaking on the subjects of user-generated content and the evolution of games and how more user content is getting into games these days, and in 10 years' time where we'll be then. So if you happen to be in Brighton, you're absolutely welcome to come along and listen to me. It's going to be pretty cool. And I'll certainly tweet along the way and maybe do some blog posts whilst I'm on my little adventure. But the bottom line is I won't be here for an entire week, so the broadcast duties will be handled by my good friend Ravy. So hopefully I managed to wriggle out of that question. I'm sorry I couldn't give you a brilliant immediate answer, but I think there are better people than me to answer that question. I eat good ice cream. That's good. Yeah. Can you show where the standalone title pages are located? Sure can. Okay, so we'll go to the standalone. That's the best place to show you. So if you imagine you've created your standalone executable and now you want to customize the title pages and things like that. So you go into the files folder, you look into titles bank, and in default you'll see all these files, crazy long files. Now, we did something for you. When you create a standalone executable, we took the liberty of encrypting all the media that gets put into the standalone executable. And the reason we did that is we wanted to protect your game, your assets, if you've done any custom assets, and also the assets of the artists who provided that artwork and those assets through the store and the DLC. Because it's very important that when you ship something, you want it protected and you retain control of the original artwork. So we encrypt everything. We encrypt the images, we encrypt WAV files, anything that we can encrypt, we do encrypt. So this little _e underscore, that means we've encrypted it. If you wanted to replace the encrypted file with a regular file, you could use that, but don't do e_e because the engine will think it's an encrypted file and it won't be able to load. If you tried to load an encrypted file, let's see if we can find a title screen, which is this, e_e title.jpg. JPEG, pretty cool. Let's try and load that in. This is not a valid JPEG JFIF file. That means it's a corrupt file. It's a gobbledygook file. You won't be able to load that in. But what you might be able to do is create your own JPEG, and then you just rename it title.jpg, leave out the _e_, and then that JPEG will load in, and you can use that as your title page. Similarly, remember when we went to the loading, you can change the loading page. When you go to the about page, you can change that page. If you lose the game, you've got a let's say you run out of lives, it actually goes straight to that page and you can use that graphic. And if you get all the way to the end of the last level and complete it, then you get that one, which is you've ended the game and you have a little congratulations or something like that. But if we step out of that folder, look at all this. The reason all this exists is we found out a while ago that if you create a graphic like a title screen, but then run it on a different resolution, the engine has to stretch it. And that's just going to make it look really crude. And so you have this option of creating different title screens for each resolution. And the engine will find the closest resolution to one of these selections. You can delete them. You can just have, let's say you only wanted 1280 by 720, delete the rest, and it will just use that one. But the more resolutions you can support, the more one-to-one pixel quality that you'll be able to give your end user. And it's definitely worth doing if you want people to see the best graphics that you've got. So that's where you would change all the title screens. And as I said, remember to not use the _e_, that's only produced by the engine to encrypt all the default stuff. So that's how you would change the title screen. There's lots of things being scrolled along. I'm probably going to miss things, but I'll just have to hit the thing at the top. Will you be improving character animation and AI? Absolutely. We're currently working on performance, and we're going to really squeeze a lot of new speed out of that. We've got some really great ideas. And we should have the voting board live once we finish the performance work. And we're loading up all the feature creep stuff. Anytime anyone requested a feature, we're now putting it into the list. And AI is one of those items. So if everyone agrees that AI should be the next thing that we do, then that's going to be scored highly, and when we finish performance, whatever's at top of the list, that's the thing we're going to work on. We've always meant to do more AI and more sophisticated animations, but that goes into a very big list with lots of other things that we'd like to do as well. So it's really about which one do we do next? And what we figured was, why not give it to the community? Let the community decide. Makes our lives easier. It's very transparent. You can't necessarily disagree with it because the majority has spoken. A true democracy. So yes, we're definitely doing improvements to the AI, the animations. We've seen some new technology emerge, like there's something called perspective neuron, where you can wear like a bodysuit, so you can actually create your own motion capture animations, and being able to graph those animations into Game Guru would be absolutely awesome. So that will be added to the feature list at some point, and hopefully people will vote for it. What have we got else on the list? You'll have to repeat your question if I've skipped you. I'm sorry about that. Can you make the winning page a video? Can you change any of those videos? No, they're just JPEGs. They're just simple images right now. If you did want a video, suggest it in the feature board and then let people vote on it, and then we'll see where we go with that. But yeah, it's a really great idea, and it's not actually that difficult to add. So it'll be a very quick feature, and then we can get that one done, released, and then you can vote for something else on the board. Can you use Dark Shader with Guru? Kind of, yes. But I wouldn't recommend it, because every time you customize a shader and then we update the shader with some new features, you either have a choice. You either keep using your old shader or you use our new one. We are going to do things where you can add new shaders as like a custom shader folder, but that's really at the back of the scene. What we want to do right now is make sure that the shaders that ship by default are great and fast and do everything you want. So, but you can by all means take over the role of tweaking the shaders, and if you come up with something like this really cool, send it to us. If you want it in the software, then we're quite happy to incorporate it if it ticks all the right boxes. Okay, a lot of really cool questions probably got pushed out because of the just general commentary. So let's see if I can find any more questions for you. You should really not encrypt the files unless the user requests it. Make it an option. I may work in collaboration with someone else. This will be a problem. Yeah, great idea. Absolutely great idea. As you've seen, it's just one option right now in the file menu, save standalone. There's not really much you can do in terms of flavour of standalone executable. And a previous iteration of this software, there was a whole series of dialogues where you could choose all sorts of cool stuff. We'll be bringing that back. We just have to sit back and wait to see if people vote for, please give us full controls on saving standalones. And if that gets to the top of the list, boom. Then we had all these really cool things. Customizing the title screens through a dialog box instead of having to go and hack in the file change yourself. Being able to choose which things are encrypted. Maybe even packing the whole thing in a single executable instead of having to ask people to zip it up. So lots of cool things we can try there. But again, it all goes under the feature board, so I don't keep getting accused of putting the wrong feature first. Okay, is a good question with a question mark on the end. How many levels do you think one could have in a single game? It's limited, I think, by your patience. If you did 500 levels, that's fine. You can do 500 levels, but you're going to have to wait whilst the save standalone process doesn't just take your 500 map files and drop them in. It has to load each level in, scrutinise that level for all the assets that were used, and then grab those assets and put them into the standalone executable archive. So it has to pretty much load and almost play every single level. So it's quite a long time. But yeah, you can do 500 levels if you wanted to. I don't think you'd want to. At least not at this stage, because there's quite a lot of work in actually generating that executable. Is there a correct sequence when painting the terrain to eliminate the ugly edges? Yes, there is, and I can demonstrate that. So you're probably all familiar with the green stuff, and you'll notice that the pavement blends nicely with the green. And if you look at the next one, look what happens. Basically, the sediment blends with the green, which blends with the path. If we pick the next one, which is moss, you see how that moss now blends with the mud? There you go. And if you look at the rock blends with the sediment, which blends with the mud, which blends with the grass, which blends with the pavement. So imagine it as the earth being built up in layers. We start with the igneous rock, and then it gets wet and mossy because it's been near the water, and then as you get more towards the higher ground, the land, it starts to turn into mud, and then the mud is fertile, so it starts to grow grass, and then humans come along and build a pavement over the top of it. So if you like to think of it in that way, that's how you can control the banding from one to the other. But I think we all agree 4 textures is insufficient, and having banding when you want to put 2 textures next to each other is not appropriate. And the only reason we did this was for performance reasons. The shader is relatively quick doing it this way. Simply the amount of operations that's required to choose which pixel from which texture is used to when you're rendering the terrain. But yeah, absolutely, we're going to have a feature. In fact, I remember proofreading it today in the voting board to completely replace the terrain system that you're looking at right now with one that allows you an arbitrary scaling, so you can choose any size terrain you want, an infinite terrain system, so it streams the terrain data in, so you pretty much create these open world situations if you want. And the best thing, we use texture splatting, so you can have an infinite number of textures painted in any order you want, overlapping or underlapping, whatever you want. And you can even just stamp your own face all over your terrain if you want to as well. But that's quite a big job. You know, it's going to take a little while to do that, but it will be on the feature board, and if that's the thing that you want, then ramp up the slider to 11, and then if other people do the same thing, then that's the thing we're going to be working on. Okay, so trying to find some more questions from the comments board. Okay, encryption. Will you have a weapon editor? Always wanted to do a weapon editor, one where you could customize, instead of just choosing these 6 weapons that we provide in the modern day category. What if you could pull bits of different weapons and attach them together? So I'd like the shaft of the rifle, but the scope of this, and then maybe the handle of the other, and then even then control the firepower. You know, what's the range of the projectiles? Is there multiple modes to it? All that kind of cool stuff. You can imagine that's quite a big module. There's quite a lot of programming and art and testing to do to create that. If it's not on the feature board when it goes live, please post it, because we'll be adding all the ones that haven't been repeated as new features on the features board, so then you'll be able to see it, and then you can vote for your feature, and then maybe get other people to vote with you, and then that will start creeping up the list. But the weapon editor will be quite a big thing. In the meantime, if you wanted to create your own weapons, you can do that absolutely. You can actually just dive into the GameCore folder. If I come back into files and go into GameCore, in Game Guru itself there's something called GameCore, and inside there is guns, and inside that folder is each individual folder that represents the weapon, and then inside there are just all the raw files, and inside there if you look for something called gunspec.txt you can actually see all the different properties, so you can actually customize a weapon and make it more powerful or less powerful with a longer range. So you can actually do that right now, but it's very hacky. You kind of have to be a bit of a developer to understand what all the files mean. But yeah, by all means, if you wanted to go in and cut and copy a gun folder and modify it and have a bit of fun doing that, then absolutely go for it. Wow, great, everyone's got the question marks. So I can recognise the question that way. Non-scripters develop tool to easily create Lua scripts. Yeah, we've been experimenting, well, not us personally, but a member of the community was doing a visual Lua editor that works in a browser, which is actually pretty cool. So you can just basically snap together blocks and it would produce a script. And it would actually produce Game Guru script, which is even better. But that's still in its sort of development stage. We didn't really want to get you excited about a visual Lua editor, only to have to tell you it's going to take another 6 months to perfect before we actually drop it into the software. But I reckon if you actually go onto the forums and look for it, visual Lua editing, you'll probably find a prototype. You can probably play around with that, and it actually does produce script right now. We're just waiting until it matures to a point where it will slide nicely into one of the official updates. So certainly keep an eye out for that. And if you really want it on the features board, the voting board, add it. And we'll add it, and then if there's a lot of support for it, like I said, we'll promote that and we'll code it when it gets to the top of the list. Able to customize the HUDs? Well, obviously you can do that now in a similar fashion as you could do with the title screens and the guns by locating the appropriate graphics. I think HUD layers is for the jetpack overlays, and decals is that. You probably find it in Language Bank, neutral, game core, HUDs. Here we go. So you can change the ammo icons and the box outs, the things that it sits within. You've got panels, all the different panels that you use. So you can change all these. You can customize them for your own personal preferences. But I think I know what you mean. You want a front-facing UI where you can just drag in an image and it will replace the HUDs, and perhaps even HUDs in the store. So you can choose from a style of HUD that you want and press a button, and voila, you've got different graphics. Yeah, that's pretty easy to do actually. It just requires that nobody wants anything else, and that's the real trick, because we all want like 15 features all at the same time, and it's literally impossible to code them all at the same time. But yeah, it's definitely easy to do from our point of view. We just need a lot of people to say yes, we want that, and then we'll do it, no problem. Can we add effects to the camera? Well, you've got a couple of effects already, and we're just waiting to see what people think of those before we add some more. I'll go into the game so you can see what I'm talking about, which panel I'm talking about. So anything of that ilk will be here in post effects. Bloom, vignettes, motion blur and depth of field are all camera effects, which take the game render and then apply effects to it. So other effects that we might be doing in the future would be like heat vision. So you could see like if there's a character behind that wall in that building, you might be able to see them through the wall with like heat vision. And then you can have other effects like when it's raining and you kind of distort the lens of the camera because the water's dripping down, and that's another post-process effect. So we've put a few in just to test the water, and if you want more, pardon the pun though, if you want more, again, you stick it on the voting board and you get people to vote for it, and then we'll definitely be able to add that. But there's so many post-process effects, we could spend a year just adding them and perfecting them. So it's really about, you know, what are the important ones? What's the ones that your game needs right now? Because, you know, that's probably going to give us extra impetus when we know it's actually going to be used to create something cool in a game, rather than just rattling off every single camera effect that ever existed ever, and then no one actually uses it, which would be a shame. An indicator to direct the player to the next objective. Actually, we have that. We have the code. We coded it in the early prototype stage when it was when we're doing the reloaded stuff, and we just didn't put it in because we needed the graphics to be a little bit more polished, and we needed to tie it in with the objective system, which is another thing that isn't running right now. So you'll probably see that in the FPE, if you drill down into the text files of the engine, there's something called, you know, is objective, and then you can set a value to it. That system is redundant right now. So once that objective system is back in play, then the idea of a little compass or an arrow in the bottom left corner that points you to your next objective, then that's something we can reintroduce. And again, if you don't find it on the features board, please add it, because we actually have the code for that one. That could be a relatively quick addition. And of course we'll tie it also into the Lua system, so you can have commands to change the objectives dynamically. But just a little flag raise, you can actually do an objective system right now. Lua is now so powerful, and you've got the ability to put graphics on the screen and text on the screen. You could create, if you wanted to, your own objective system with your own arrow system. But it is getting to that sort of advanced mode level. And I know what you want. You want to just be able to press a button and you've got your little compass, and then you can follow it to the next objective. So the good news is we have the code for that, and if you vote for it, we can drop it in. Can you explain an example of timers in Lua? Yeah, we've got global. You just look for the word timer, and you've got entity has its own timer value, which is pretty cool. Just try drawing that value to the screen whilst you're watching an entity, and you'll actually see some pretty cool stuff. So this is the good stuff. Start timer and get timer. So essentially what happens is you can start a timer off. It's like an egg timer, or a stopwatch would be a better analogy. You start it, and then it counts up in milliseconds. So after 1 second, 1,000 counts has happened. And what get timer does it actually returns how many of them units, how many milliseconds has passed since you did start timer. So in your script, for example, let's say, oh wait, actually I had a really great idea. Let's actually do some live coding just for you guys. So we can take start timer and we can add it here. So when you switch the light off, we start the timer, which is great. When you switch the light back on, you can do if the get timer is greater than 2000. What that means is if you took longer than 2 seconds to turn the light back on, then this action will happen. And what the action might be is a different prompt. But you'd only see it for a split second. So it probably wouldn't do very much, but we'll have a go. So we go hello, hello. We'll just do that. Make it really big so we can maybe see it flash on the screen. So if we save that and then run the game, I remember we should still have that light script applied. So let's see what happens. Now remember we have to go into here and press E to switch it off, and they have to wait more than 2 seconds. So watch the prompt at the bottom. Let's see if this does it. Switch it off, wait 1, 2, 3. So if we switch it back on, we should see a momentary hello, hello. Yep, I saw it. I don't know if you saw it, but unmitigated success. So that's a little glimpse into how to use timers in Lua. And of course, because if you actually see the global, see how it worked? That records the actual timer that was stamped when you issued that command. But you got a G timer, which is the game timer. So there's another variable that you can have a play around with as well. So it's pretty cool. So I just wanted to flag up a time warning, because obviously I could talk forever, but we actually only have 5 minutes left. So if there's something desperately you wanted to ask, then you want to be able to push everyone else's comments out the way, then go for it. Just having a quick look. I see no question marks, so that's good. Looks like someone's getting some good advice from Ravy Poos. And like to do some 3D isometric, but would like to enable and disable the clip mode, so I could walk under a overhead doorway without zooming in. Oh right, yeah, the camera collision clip system. Well, that was one of Rick's finer ideas, that rather than have some sort of fading out of objects and zooming in slowly and all that smoothness, it was straight out of GTA 5 that when the camera is obstructed, you immediately move the camera to beyond the obstruction so you can actually see it. But I agree, there's a lot of different third-person control systems, and that's just one way to solve camera collision for third-person viewing. It's probably best then that you send a direct email to me to describe specifically what the control system should be as a replacement, because there's so many of them. I could implement something and it will be the wrong one. It's not the one you expected. So it's best just to get into some crazy ass detail and then let me know what it is you're after, and then I'll reword it and maybe put it into the voting board and see if everybody wants to see that next. How can I access the recordings of this session? You'll find it actually on this page. So once this broadcast ends, it will turn it into a video for you, and then it will place it above the broadcast video feed. There's already one there, and after I finish this one, then there'll be another one. So water planes. Yes, there are water planes in Game Guru. Next question. There is built into the Game Guru, so that's all you need. Yes, I agree. How can I access regarding this video? Already answered. Painting textures on entities? Nope, not at all. The closest you'll get is painting your own face onto the custom characters in the character creator, which actually is pretty cool. And it's perhaps a glimpse of what another module might be in the future, where you can stamp textures and images and draw onto any entity within the game. So that's certainly something we can entertain, and we already have technology, as I say, through the character creator that might enable that. But I'm afraid the best thing to do is to get open a paint package, load in the textures from the entity folder, and then modify them, and then rerun the game and see your textures in the game. that's pretty much what people are doing right now, and you'll get to learn a few more skills as well, which is pretty cool. Water planes at different heights, yeah, that could be as simple as a single lure command. So if you want to add that as a requested feature on the voting board when it goes live, it would literally take me about half a day to implement that command and test it. Less than half a day. But us programmers like to create conservative estimates. Day-night cycles, we had that running at one point, but it wasn't really what... it wasn't comparable to other systems that you've seen in games, so we disabled it for a while. Like I said, if you wanted to see that, you can find it on the voting board. I think that will be that's been on the feature creep list for quite a while, actually. But you can actually do day-night with lure right now. We've added extra commands. I'll just show you one really quick. I know we're running out of time, but I've got time to show you this. It's called light zone.lure. Look at these really cool commands. You can actually set the ambience and the surface intensities and fog. So you could actually, in Lure, gradually fade out the game so it becomes dark, and then fade it in so it becomes light. And you have full control of that. Instead of these literal values, you can put a variable and then increase that variable over time. So you could actually create your own day-night cycles if you wanted to. But again, you need to do a bit of scripting for that. How do you play MP games in GG? That's going to be covered in extensive detail next week, but it's really, really quite simple. You just press this icon here, multiplayer mode, and that will allow you to join. You can either host your game, or you can wait for someone to host a game, and then you can join their game, and then you're playing multiplayer. It's probably a good idea to get a few of your Steam friends on at the same time. One of you can host, and the rest can join, and then you can play a multiplayer game. So I'm going to wrap it up now because there's literally less than 2 minutes and I need 1 minute just to say goodbye. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was informative. Do the same again tomorrow, so you can tune in then. As usual, send me your comments and also what you would like to see tomorrow, because all I got was lights, see a whole game with multiple levels, and want to see a bit of Lure scripting, and all of that I managed to squeeze in, which was pretty cool. So please send me what you want me to do tomorrow, and I will go and do that within reason, and make sure it's not rude. So I hope you enjoyed it. we don't need 2 hours. No. I don't think I could do 2 hours. It's already the end of the day for me. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and this is me signing off, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks very much. Bye bye. He switches off.